I hate to lead off because I plan to be contentious, and I am grateful for the being here and for the thoughtful questions that have been asked by members of both sides of the aisle this morning. Coming from the eastern shore of Maryland, where I now live, it has restored my faith that sanity still prevails in this nation's capital. My perspective is a double one. I served for 4.5 years as Special Assistant to President Johnson, and my primary portfolio was education. I was the White House midwife for a number of the acts that we are considering now, and it was particularly in my office that some of the consensus was reached that led to the Guaranteed Student Loan Program. I was the draftsman of the speech that the President gave at the 100th anniversary of the Office of Education, in which he said every young person has the right to go as far in higher education as his ability can take him. And that indeed was a sweeping commitment, and we're still, I think, living with the consequences of that spirit which he expressed but was by no means limited to LBJ. I had the feeling this morning that this particular study is a red herring. We are getting preoccupied with trying to nitpick as to the niceties of the study, something that could very well, by Mr. Finn's own admission, take us well into the next decade as we perfected the various things that the professional researchers do. And yet I listened incredulously as two value-laden judgments were issued that show that even as this pretense at precision of research is being foisted on us, that we are seeing these great lobbying artillery shells coming from the Department of Education. The first of those statements was that the reason for default is because the product doesn't satisfy. Took those notes down. You raised it just there at the very end a minute ago. The second was that college facilities in summer were completely empty. What campus was he on, pray tell? I spend my greatest energies keeping our facilities occupied and at full motion with all the infrastructure that I can devote from the college. So we're getting these sweeping value judgments that are hyperbolic, that are emotional, that are based on long history, and at the same time we're being asked to look at this nitpicking little study that really isn't worth the time it is taking to even read it. This is my value judgment, which I would be prepared to sustain. I come from 5 years' experience now as president of the 10th oldest college in America, Washington College, an independent liberal arts college which has managed through thick and thin to keep going. The definition of my job that was given to me when I arrived was that I was someone who was supposed to live in a big house and beg, and by golly, that is the accurate definition of the job. The statements that Mr. Finn made here this morning are simply a part of a routine that has coming down from his boss. I wrote a letter to the New York Times, which I would like to enter in the record as my statement. I was preparing to respond, so I did not prepare a written statement, but in which Mr. Bennett said that the higher education in America is underproductive and under-accountable, and that we were greedy. This was an article he wrote on the op-ed page of the New York Times, to which my article is a reply. I submit that that kind of scolding, that kind of cheapery from the Secretary of Education cannot permit a reasonable dialogue about what are the costs or the prices in higher education today. Now, Seems to me, in looking at the effort to look at the costs of higher education, we have got to differentiate. First of all, the 42% of the colleges, which you yourself described, Mr. Chairman, as bleak. They charge under $5,000 tuition, and how they hang themselves together and serve and pay their faculty, I simply don't know. And somebody ought to do a look at what is the fate of them. Then we have at the other end of the spectrum the blue chip colleges and universities, whose tuitions seem to have, because of Mr. Bennett's criticisms, have even fascinated the chronicle of our higher education, so that they become the sort of the lead in the news, whose tuition ranges from $12,000 up to $15,000, or even, I presume there's some now at $16,000. Look at those colleges. They also are the highest endowed. As someone said, 26 colleges have over 50% of the endowment. This is not an egalitarian environment we're looking at. It's a rich nation and a poor nation in higher education. They, though it happens to be, have the longest line of applicants. They are doing, in my own opinion, from the ones I know, the best job of trying to provide financial aid so that at least a share of the needy in the country, those who have ability but not means, can go to them too, so that they do not become havens for the rich. And then you have, when we're talking about colleges, you have those of us who are in between. And if you look at the listings put out by the College Board, there is a remarkable convergence of what tuitions is. It ranges between approximately $8,000 a year and just over $10,000 a year. And a large number of us this year fall into that category. My tuition is $8,700. And I would say this was not collusion that brought us here. It was the facts of the meeting our budget and competing in the particular marketplace that we do, which is one of the most highly competitive marketplaces of any in America. How do we reach our budget? We sit down and look at our endowment and say, what is the maximum we can take, even going beyond what our financial advisors tell us is safe drawdown on endowment? And we take that, and it has been declining because interest rates have been declining, and so the yield of the endowment has gone down, even though I've been able to increase endowment from $9 million when I was there to $17 million today. Endowment is one thing. The second is annual giving. Alumni, friends of the college, and various others, including the sector that comes from the state of Maryland, and not the student aid money that comes from the federal government, because that goes in, that's a transfer agreement within the budget. But the state of Maryland does give a per capita grant to the college, the independent college. We put these together and we put all of our costs together. We make a February budget, and then we review it in September. I spent all day Saturday going over our September budget to see if we were on target. And we will have a balanced budget. And under those pressures, I've been obliged to increase tuition for 5 years in a row. All I can say for those who are asking, where is the money going? Come and audit us as we are audited by some of the, I have two bankers. I have Mr. Al Decker, the head of Black & Decker on my finance committee. They go over that budget with a fine-tooth comb. It represents real costs. Now, where are we spending it? Where are the pressures in spending? The number one is undoubtedly financial aid. We have gone up from $800,000 a year to this year, it's over $2 million from our own internal resources, money that we have raised. Now you say, is that from tuition or is it from somewhere else? Well, we mingle the money that comes from tuition and the money that comes from annual giving. So you can't say which dollar it is. It comes out of what we call the G&E budget, plus some money that we have an endowment that is endowed for scholarships. That is where we get the money that creates this $2 million. That's gone up more than from 800 to over 2 million. That's almost 3 times it's gone up in the last 4 years. So that has hit us very hard. The second is facilities. All during the 70s, for reasons which I do not completely understand, but related somewhat to inflation, related to the fact that enrollment was declining steadily, there was what is called deferred maintenance, in which they just kept putting off and putting off and putting off. Now, a college does not have the right of a private corporation to write off a building and then tear it down or sell it and build some other. We have to take those buildings that constitute the idea of the college for a great many alums and students. And they are very expensive to renovate. I'm just in the middle of a $26 million renovation program for which I'm trying to raise every dollar outside of tuition. Whether I'll be able to do it or not, I don't know, but that is what living in a big house and begging is all about. And then the third cost pressure is faculty salaries. 1977, which is sometimes quoted as the model, is certainly not where, in my opinion, as an average, faculty average salaries should be measured as the promised land of what should be the faculty salary. But even if it were, we are down as a nation 0.5% from that point, so that in constant dollars there has been a very slight decline. My college, we are below the national average. The average salary of my tenured faculty is $32,000. And I'm trying to, my commitment to them is that over a period of years, I'm going to get to that national average for Division IIB independent colleges. Same time, we're witnessing that the public institutions are paying higher salaries than we pay, so that one of the arguments that you have as a private institution is you have better teaching. Well, if you're paying lower salaries, it's a little bit harder to argue that, but that's part of the problem. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that in looking at the costs and looking at the price of higher education, we must not be diverted by a study that could take another decade to refine. Let us ask the very simple questions that you all have been asking this morning, and let's arrive at some answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.